Documentar prezentat de Banca Transilvania.
He wants to get closer to Vladimir Putin. He thinks NATO is obsolete. He says Brexit will be a great thing. He's Donald Trump, and in a few hours' time, he'll become the 45th President of the United States.
Thank you.
Donald Trump's victory over Hillary Clinton shocked the world.
Now it's time for America to bind the wounds of division. Have to get together. To all Republicans and Democrats and independents across this nation, I say it is time for us to come together as one united people. It's time.
It was a rejection of 8 years of the Obama administration and a gigantic slap in the face for a political class that had lost touch with its electorate.
I don't know if it's everybody is in favor of Trump, but they're in favor of changing the system, which is broken. Washington's been in gridlock. The elites, professional politicians have been there, and the country's been suffering.
One of the saws that goes around now, went around America, is that the press got it all wrong because we didn't take Trump seriously as a candidate, but we took very seriously what he had to say. And the voters were much smarter than the press. They took Trump very seriously as a candidate, but they didn't give a damn about what he said.
And in a few hours' time, Donald Trump will follow 44 presidents in taking the oath of office on the steps of the Capitol.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy.
I, Ronald Reagan.
I, William Jefferson Clinton.
I, George Walker Bush.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
For the first time, a man with no political or military experience has been elected president.
Tough decision.
Donald comes from a different place. He may be wealthy, but he doesn't come from this establishment.
He comes from outside politics. He's never served in government. Even his work in business was not large organizations, was more deal-making. So he basically puts himself forward as someone who can make deals, maybe.
I think he wants to be successful. He's a man who prides himself on being great, being successful at things.
Trump campaigned as the outsider who would clean up Washington. But his election rhetoric was full of other headline-grabbing proposals, from bringing back lost jobs to the United States, to forcing Europe to pay more for NATO, to forming better relations with President Putin and Russia. But it was very light on detail. So just how many of his campaign promises will become reality? What will the flamboyant billionaire president mean for all of us in Europe?
I think his predilections, his natural instincts, are to support the populist parties of Europe, to support the downfall of the establishment in Europe, to downgrade NATO, to downgrade the EU, to play big boy politics with the Russians and the Chinese, and I think that I think his inner beliefs right now are beliefs that are very much outside the mainstream and very much the new school, not the old school.
To be honest, with most foreign policy issues, I think Trump is kind of making it up as he goes along. This is not a person who thought deeply, extensively about foreign policy. He is a businessman, as he's always reminding us.
Trump's stance on President Putin and the future of NATO means European security is at the top of the watch list. Russia has recently warned Montenegro against joining NATO, and Russian nationalists have been accused of plotting to assassinate the country's prime minister. The president-elect of Bulgaria has called for an end to sanctions against Russia. And Igor Dodon of Moldova wants to restore close ties with Moscow. Russia's next-door neighbors from the Balkans to the Baltics are growing nervous. Hillary Clinton has always accused Trump of cozying up to Putin.
If Mr. Trump gets his way, it'll be like Christmas in the Kremlin.
By the end of the Obama administration, I think there was really a deep bitterness between Russia and the U.S., between Obama personally and Putin. Trump does want to change that. The question that bothers foreign policy watchers here is at what price?
I think there are very, very few people who are as good as chess players as Putin right now. Look, in my judgment, America holds the high cards in these rivalries with Russia and China, and Putin holds the low cards. But Putin's been playing his cards a lot better than the Americans have been playing theirs. I think that's been true for a while, and listen, I think these Russians are very smart.
The nomination of Rex Tillerson as Secretary of State has added to these concerns. The Texan businessman has close ties with Moscow. His oil company Exxon has set up 10 joint ventures with Russian oil company Rosneft, and President Putin personally pinned Russia's Order of Friendship Medal on his chest.
Tillerson is seen as Russia's man. He's friendly with Putin.
Diplomatic tension has been high since Russia occupied the Crimea in 2014. Recently, Russian military maneuvers on the Ukrainian border have set European nerves on edge. And President Putin has made no secret of his desire to bring the Baltic states back into the Russian fold.
Abraham Lincoln lived on a farm when he was a little boy, and he used to tell people that the old farmer who lived in the farm next to his family used to say, "I don't need much land, just what adjoins mine." That's kind of Russia.
Donald Trump has openly admired what he sees as Putin's strong and decisive leadership, and has even gone so far as to see Russia as a potential ally.
It would be so great if we could get Russia on our side and other countries on our side and knock the hell out of ISIS and knock them, right? Right? So stupid. Just knock the living hell out of them.
I can't speak for Mr. Trump in terms of what he thinks about, Putin, but I will. What I think he means is that he admires him as being a strong leader and a very popular leader who is restoring national pride to his nation. Does that mean that he agrees with Mr. Putin on everything? I don't think so.
Trump is, in a sense, the anti-Putin. He's the opposite. If Putin has that kind of secretive, say less than you know, the sort of quiet bully off in the corner plotting his revenge. Donald Trump is the loud bully. He's the guy who just blows into the room and tells you off.
The man who'll have to wrestle with the Putin problem is General James Mattis, who has been nominated as Defense Secretary.
We are going to appoint Mad Dog Mattis as our Secretary of Defense. But we're not announcing it till Monday, so don't tell anybody. Mad Dog.
Mattis's bedtime reading includes Marcus Aurelius in the original Latin, but he also has a tough reputation.
All I can say is he is the real deal.
General Mattis is somebody who believes in the application of force. Like most generals, he is wary about the initial commitment. He's had to sign too many letters to parents, escort too many coffins home. But once that process has begun, he wants to see it through.
The nomination of General Mike Flynn as National Security Advisor adds another battle-hardened general to the White House team.
General Flynn made his reputation in the most secret part of the U.S. military, the Joint Special Operations Command, which fuses our most competent and most secret forces. These basically are our capture, kill teams.
My military opinion is, sir,
but both of these generals already hold a more skeptical view of Vladimir Putin than their commander-in-chief.
If Putin likes Donald Trump, guess what, folks? That's called an asset, not a liability.
The charitable view is that Donald Trump is actually playing a very clever game, and that is, and it's sort of reverse Nixonism, and that is Nixon split apart the two allies, China and Russia, and then became very friendly with China and isolated Russia, and became very combative toward Russia. And that Trump is doing this in reverse. He's trying to split the two apart, but instead of China, he's embracing Russia and beginning to demonize China. The larger picture over time may well be something that a Kissinger would say, well, that was smarter than it looked. But in the meantime, there's a lot of fear that it represents sort of an acquiescence to the Russians, that we're going to overlook what they've done with annexing Crimea. We're going to overlook the way they're destabilizing Ukraine. We're going to overlook the threats they pose in the Baltics. And the fears that are growing up in Eastern Europe.
The fear is less of a new Cold War than of a new Yalta, of a new agreement between Putin and Russia and Trump's America on a division of spheres of influence where we would concede to Russia that in its near abroad, in the area around Russia, it would have a kind of primacy. That really frightens our friends in the Baltic states. It frightens Poland. I'd say it frightens everybody on the Russian periphery.
So Donald Trump's team will be responsible for striking that crucial balance in United States-Russian relations.
It's going to be a busy day. Stay tuned.
This is a group that will support Trump's desire to have an opening to Russia. Tillerson certainly understands Russia. Flynn has no animus toward Russia. I think Mattis is more skeptical. If there's a hand on the brake here as Trump moves toward Moscow, it would be Mattis's.
All of this sends a shiver through the members of NATO. Under Article 5 of the NATO Treaty, all countries are pledged to come to the aid of any member that comes under attack.
We're protecting countries that most of the people in this room have never even heard of, and we end up in World War III in a country, just, come on, give me a break.
He is no champion of the transatlantic partnership as we have known it. Our previous presidents, I think were Atlanticists in their hearts. He is not.
Any sign that NATO is not as robust, any sign that Article 5 commitments are questioned, is something that Russia would exploit. And the sort of thing, at a minimum, they've done in eastern Ukraine, I fear we could expect in other places. Indeed, it's not even impossible that we won't see that anyhow, that Russia will do some probing in some of the smaller, weaker Baltic states.
So I think early in Trump's presidency, we'll have people in the Baltic states asking, and American politicians asking, is President Trump serious about this commitment to take America to war if Estonia, if Lithuania, if Latvia are attacked or even radically destabilized? And if that NATO commitment is not seen as credible, I think the alliance quickly begins to unravel.
The Pentagon already plans to quadruple its budget for European defense in 2017. And earlier this week, there was a welcoming ceremony for American troops arriving in Poland, which will also house a new missile defense system. Canada and Italy are sending troops to Latvia. And Britain is sending warplanes to help patrol Romanian airspace. Already last April, the United States switched on an $800 million missile defense shield at Deveselu Air Base in Romania, to the fury of the Russians.
I believe that having friends like Romania and Poland and allies are vitally important. Not having the solidarity of people who are close to the threat, who can translate it for us, who can help us understand what is at stake, and also who will stand shoulder to shoulder with us.
The money needed to maintain troop levels will have to be voted by Congress, and President Trump will have to fight for the level of defense expenditure he needs.
The United States is going to need to spend more to make sure it has a sufficiently varied and large military that can do several things, possibly at once. The good news is that he'll inherit a military budget that's only about 3% plus or minus of GDP. That's very low by American historical standards, by post-World War II standards. So the United States could easily spend considerably more on defense, and it's not going to break the bank.
The real story is that force levels in the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, and the platforms, the combat platforms, are reduced to lower levels than we have seen traditionally. They're also more technologically advanced, and the soldiers themselves are trained at a higher level of technological proficiency. So numbers can be deceiving. The question is, are they ready, if needed, to go into combat? And that costs money as well. They have to train, they have to deploy, and they have to exercise. I personally think that Europe and Eastern Europe, in the face of this difficult climate with Russia, pending some kind of better understanding that accommodates our concerns in the West, would be the last thing to be cut.
Of the 28 NATO members, only 5 at present comply with the requirements to spend 2% of economic output on defense.
Our allies are not paying their fair share.
Well, I think most Americans feel that any NATO country should pay its fair share, if you will. And there is a feeling that sometimes that doesn't happen.
He has said through the campaign, despite a lot of criticism, that he'd like to see Europe pay more of its share for NATO's defense. I think there's now a consensus that that's actually something that most Americans would like to see.
They say, what would happen if Russia, somebody attacks? I said, I don't know, have they paid? Have they paid? Have they paid? Tell me, have they paid? Well, they haven't paid, but we have a treaty. I said, yeah, they have a treaty too, they have to pay. We're gonna end up in World War III protecting people, and these people can't pay.
You know, Mr. Trump is a negotiator. And you always start out by saying, you know, you're going to pay for everything. But it's the same thing with a building contractor. You want somebody to build your building. You start out by saying, I'm going to pay X. And he says, I want Y. And someplace in the middle, the building gets built.
You can't have a strong NATO without a strong United States that believes in NATO and the transatlantic alliance. And we don't know yet. In Trump's mind, will NATO be a promise that just has outlived its usefulness to the United States? We don't know the answer to that yet.
Donald Trump's views on NATO are driven by his belief in America first. And it's an attitude he'll also apply to the European Union.
America benefits a lot from the common institutions of the European Union, and of course of the existence of NATO there in Europe. If the European Union falls apart, there is a real danger that NATO might fall apart.
I think the era of an ever more integrated, ever tighter Europe is over. I don't think that's happening, and I think the idea of a one-size-fits-all, one model of Europe for everybody, if it's all or nothing, it will be nothing.
I think of the European Union as being like a company in liquidation, and in part I mean that it's sort of outrun its reserves of capital. As we say about automobiles, it's running on fumes, not on gasoline anymore.
But people didn't vote for Trump because of his views on NATO or Europe, or because he admires Vladimir Putin. They voted for him primarily because he promised to bring back lost jobs and protect existing ones.
You're losing your jobs, you're losing your income, you're losing your factories. They're going to China, they're going to Mexico. Japan is killing us with the cars. Now it's Vietnam, it's India, it's everybody.
Trump is about raw national interest. He has said over and over again, I'm not about nation building abroad. I want a policy of America first. It's a policy of basic applied selfishness. We're going to think of ourselves, of our interests, of our economic interests. We're going to be less worried about offending people. We're going to be less worried about challenging sacred cows.
We will defend our freedom, our jobs, and our economic independence. It's going to be America first. My economic plan is going to grow this economy, raise your wages, and create millions and millions of new jobs for this country.
Trump claims to have already saved 1,000 American jobs by persuading the U.S. company Carrier not to relocate to Mexico. And the Ford Motor Company has cancelled plans for a new factory in Mexico. Instead, they will expand their Michigan factory, creating 700 American jobs.
Companies are not going to leave the United States anymore without consequences.
Trump says he wants smart trade rather than free trade. His new Commerce Secretary is Wilbur Ross. A fellow billionaire, he has made a fortune by turning round ailing companies. Ross is a big critic of what he calls dumb trade deals.
I don't think Wilbur Ross would have signed up had he not felt comfortable with Trump's views on trade. They may moderate them, but I do that. Look, if talking to CEOs in this country, a number of whom voted for Hillary Clinton, they actually think that the bright silver lining of the Trump presidency is that he will bring economic growth, that his views on taxes, his views on infrastructure spending, his views on lifting the heavy hand of regulation, especially on small business, all of that will pump up the economy. They have one big caveat. All of these things look good for growth, except this issue of trade. They like most of the rest of the program, the economic program, but it's the trade issue. You talk to people in Walmart, for example, they sure as hell don't want to get into a trade war with China.
Having a majority in both the Senate and the House of Representatives should make it a lot easier for Trump to get legislation agreed by Congress. But in order to implement his program, President Trump will have to find his way around the labyrinth of government administration. All his nominees come from outside the mainstream of Republican Party politics, and hardly any of them have any experience of government. And recently, he's turned the nominations process into a family affair, nominating his son-in-law Jared Kushner as his unpaid senior advisor. Just 36 years old and a lifelong Democrat, Kushner could become the second most powerful person in the United States.
I do think Jared Kushner, from everything I've heard about him, from people who know him well, that I personally I'm pleased that he's there, because he does sound like a moderating force around the president. He's not a hidebound conservative. I believe Jared Kushner and Ivanka are both Democrats.
It may be that the two most important people around him are his daughter, Ivanka, and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. It's telling that it will be Ivanka Trump, not his wife, Melania, who will be in the East Wing, where the First Lady traditionally is headquartered. This will not be the office of the First Lady under President Trump. It will be the office of the First Family, and it will be Ivanka who presides over things.
Traditionally, the incoming president keeps a low profile at this point in the proceedings. But Trump has no time for tradition. He's determined not to lose touch with the people who elected him, and he's tweeted more than 34,000 times to his 19 million Twitter followers. About everything, from President Putin deciding not to expel American diplomats.
Great move on delay by V. Putin. I always knew he was very smart.
To this.
New Year's Day greetings, including to my many enemies and those who fought me and lost.
And even
Meryl Streep, one of the most overrated actresses in Hollywood.
The question with Donald Trump is, can anybody talk sense into him when he's in one of these Twitter storms, when he's in an impulsive mood, when he wants to strike back at people, when his vanity has been offended? And I think the answer is, if anybody can do that, it will be his daughter Ivanka or his son-in-law Jared. And for that reason, I think it's important, it's in the country's interest that they be there to have a steadying influence on him.
Donald Trump poses as the strong man. But frankly, the Oval Office could be more of a cage, and he could be a very unhappy person, unable to get the bureaucracy to work, unable to get checks written by a recalcitrant Congress.
There'll be order. My concern is whether anybody can govern, whether the divisions between the parties, within the parties, between the Congress and the White House, whether that allows anybody to govern effectively, or whether American politics have entered a phase where essentially good governance is all but impossible. That worries me more than anything else.
He sounds like he wants to be an authoritarian. The system is not wired to allow a president to exert authority. And indeed, the bureaucracy itself may line up against certain orders in the CIA who don't want to do what they consider to be torture, the military who are under constitutional obligation not to follow illegal orders.
The Trump team has now been chosen. Each member boasts an impressive career record, but the president will need them to have a blend of brains and guile.
I used to tell my students when I taught at the Kennedy School at Harvard, the good news is they're all smart. The bad news is they'll think being smart's enough. And being smart's never enough. You've also got to learn how to work the system. Barack Obama is one of the smartest presidents we've ever had. Jimmy Carter was one of the smartest presidents we ever had. But I don't think either one of them were wildly successful presidents because weren't necessarily good at the give and take of politics.
Donald Trump promised that if the American people elected him president, he would be a force for change. As he prepares to enter the White House, even his enemies would have to agree that he has kept his promise.
There's no question that walking into the West Wing of the White House on the day of your inauguration gives you a tremendous sense of responsibility that's suddenly yours. It has a tremendous impact on most people. I must tell you, Donald Trump does not qualify as most people. And so far during the transition, he's exhibited very little sense of making a personal transition from being a candidate to a president.
Donald Trump, in some ways, is a scary person. Your viewers around the world shouldn't be in any doubt that this is somebody who, is impulsive, who, is untested. He could do things that would be risky for all of us. So having people around him who can get to him and say, don't do that, is really important.
It's a privilege to serve in the White House. So I've been very privileged in my life to serve in several. And so there's a deep part of me, if you're part of that fraternity of people who serve, you want our presidents to succeed. But in order to succeed, you have to be presidential. And that's what we're not yet seeing.
The only prediction that can be made with any accuracy is that Donald Trump will be an unpredictable president.
Documentar prezentat de Banca Transilvania.